Hello, everyone. We are back on here to answer your Amish questions, doing another Amish Q&A like I had promised. I posted earlier today that I would be on here with cousin David Yoder, and that's who I got on today is my cousin David here. So
I'm back.
He says he's back. So every week I'm planning on doing that. I have 3 more scheduled for the next 3 weekends in a row. And of course, if there is any of you ex-Amish that follow me on here, there's quite a bit throughout the country. If you're willing to be interviewed, shoot me a private message and let me know where you're at. I might be able to come to you. I am going to Southern Ohio in 3 weeks. And so if you're an ex-Amish and you want to share your testimony, or if you have just want to be interviewed of how you grew up in the Amish, let me know. I would love to interview you. But I'm going to start out with this today, David. A lot of people asked, I'm sure you've got this before too, and if what was the hardest thing to get the ball rolling when we first left the Amish? Mine would be, I thought, before I left, I thought it was going to be smooth. Well, certainly smoother than what it was, because I had, no Social Security number. We are from a old order Amish community where they didn't have any of those things, even a sealed birth certificate, but it had like a copy. So I was able to go to the health department and let them know my name, because most Amish report to the health department when there's a newborn and give them the name. So it was in the computer. I just had to tell them my birth date, my name, and then my parents' name, so that they can get me one printed off and seal it, a legal one, so that I can go get my ID. And then also those 2 forms is what I had to get a Social Security number, because I had to have 2 forms of ID. So when people ask me what was the hardest thing for me when I first left, of course, the fast-pacedness of life, but mainly just to be able to get going. I thought it was going to be real easy and simple, and but it took quite a while to be able to get all of that situated. They have things in place now where it's a little bit easier for ex-Amish when they leave, and you just tell them you were Amish, and you can go to Columbus to the BMV headquarters, and they help people a little. It's a little bit better than what it used to be. But that was my biggest one, because we didn't have all that information. So I would go to the BMV, and they said, "Hey, you need a birth certificate." Okay, so I go to the health department, and they said, "Well, you need an ID," and I said, "Well, I don't have that either."
Yeah.
So you have to kind of start somewhere.
Yeah, that was tough.
Was that your toughest one too, or?
Yep. Yeah, it definitely wasn't as easy as you had in your mind that it would be, and plus juggling work. I mean, you couldn't just go and do it, go get whatever you needed at that point, because you were always working. And then when you got off of work, usually the BMV or the courthouse or whatever it was closed. So I had to wait until the next day. And it was just really tough to get the ball rolling. Once you got your ID, that was like a big step. Then you could go get your birth certificate, or whichever one was first. So you need like two forms of identification to get your Social Security number. And sometimes you just had to go do it, like take off of work and have a driver to take you over there. And that was in Lyman to get your Social Security signed up for that. So it wasn't just everything in Kenton for us. It was, you had to go from place to place. It made it rough, but once you had those 3 items, then you were good to go and apply for your driver's license and take the test and all that good stuff.
Everything seemed to take a lot more time than what we kind of thought, I think. And it's kind of, I thought it would be faster, but luckily we had people to help us out. I had a nice fellow by name Todd was his name, at the pallet shop next to my mom and dad's, and he helped me out. And so he was able to help me a lot, plus other English folks that knew me when I was still growing up in the Amish were able to go with me and even explain to them, he left the Amish and he's got to get the ball rolling here. So it's nice to have a lot of help. But hey, if any of you got any questions today, just put them up in the comments and we'll do our best to answer them. Also, I want to kind of touch up on the whole, our community where we're from here in Kenton. We didn't have a whole lot of women leaving. I have a cousin, Wilma Beachy, that left, but it seemed like the women were more sheltered than the men. The men get out there, they get to know other people. So I was able to kind of talk to somebody about wanting to leave. Is that kind of the way you look at it, David? It seems like the women are more sheltered. They're in the house a lot more than the guys, and they don't really get out there to talk to somebody if they do want to leave.
Absolutely. I mean, that the guys have such way more of an opportunity to do whatever they want, basically. You know, if they want to leave, the door is way broader than what it is for the women, because the women are just, seems like they're stuck in the house helping mom. I mean, they do get out to help, you know, the boys in the fields and making, you know, putting up hay and all that stuff, but the girls definitely have a way harder time to leave if they ever want to. And I know there's some girls around the Kenton community that are cleaning houses, like they're doing. I don't know if they're doing it all by themselves or if they're in with the English folk to help them. But I know they do go from place to place to clean people's houses. So that is definitely helping. If they would have the opportunity for them to get out, it would open that door. It's a little bit broader, I think, than what it was. But still, it's tough because, for number one, they are taught that they don't have a voice.
The women, yeah.
The women, absolutely.
Absolutely.
You don't speak, basically, if there's a guy in the house. That's
The women really don't have a voice the way they should have.
Exactly.
It's not equal.
Oh yeah.
Between man and woman. The women really don't have that much. Well, they really don't have any rights. Yeah. And I think most of that they get out of the Old Testament in the Bible.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about that, I would like to touch up on there's no any kind of talking about sex education in any way.
Yeah.
In our community anyway. I know some more liberal, more modern communities kind of making awareness, you know, the dangers of it. I know our community, we didn't really have any, it's all hush-hush. You know, we didn't really talk, that's just something you don't talk about. And then the affectionate part, I think, comes in on that. There was really no affection showed. Like my dad and my mom, I never heard I love you from them. You know, they just, that's just normal for them.
Yeah.
So there was I think it's looked at as too sexual. There's no hugs. There's no saying I love you. Just being around each other, you know, smiling, being there, that's basically enough. But as far as actually diving deep and showing and talking and teaching about maybe the dangers of sex education, that just don't happen. Matter of fact, all the women, we were talking about the women, that's what reminded me of this. Usually the women are told to go in the house, and they're not supposed to be any part of when there's, like, you know, animals, cows with a bull. You get the bull out to breed. Any kind of animal breeding that goes on, the women are not supposed to see that. I know for our community anyway, I can't speak for all Amish, but I know in our community that was very forbidden to have a woman or a female see how that works, how a baby is born. Yeah. So I know me personally, I didn't know how a baby was born until I figured it out on my own at age 16 is where you might have known maybe before that, did you?
Maybe a year or two before that. I mean, literally, you just figure things out on your own unless you have a brother or, let's say, cousins. On my experience, like, I felt left out many, many, many times because we had cousins. I mean, our family's huge. I mean, on my mom's side especially, and because she was a Bontrager. So that, I had cousins, like, probably 50 to 60 of them. I mean, it was a big family. So I know a couple of instances, there was like, I know my cousins that were like 5 to 6 years younger than me knew way more about all that kind of stuff than what I did. And they would talk about it, and I'd be like, you know, didn't no idea what they were talking about. But how did they know? You know, like, unless, I'm sure their dad or their parents did not tell them how it works. It's the kids talking among themselves, that's how they're finding out. That's how they're being educated. So basically, they were educating themselves. So I was probably 13, 14 years old, and I was definitely very curious. Like, you see the bull breeding the cow, or doing whatever they're doing, and we're like, okay, so about 6 months later, it's having a calf,
Right.
or a horse, having a colt, or the pigs, having 10 little piglets. How's that all happening? You just, you start taking notice, things are going on, and you start putting two and two together, and like, all right.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. So that's basically how I found out. I was never told how it works.
There's no education on
There's
that.
nothing. There is zero. I mean, it is the biggest hush-hush thing. It's like a secret service, like,
Right.
it's crazy. But
I think there's a dangers to that. At a certain age, there should be awareness. It should be talked about. It should be like education. People should be educated on the dangers of it, because I'll tell you this: when there's no education, some of the stuff I've been hearing, especially recently, coming from some of the Amish communities, even my own Amish community, some of the stories, it makes you realize that some gruesome things can happen. Abuse, sexual abuse, all kinds of abuse can happen when you don't have no education. It's not being taught. It's not even a discussion.
Yep.
So now if you get up there like I was, personally, I remember getting up there where I'm 15, 16 years old, and now your hormones, you have the hormones. How are you going to control those? And you start having thoughts, and you start wanting to do some things that might not be right. But how do you, when there's no education there, no awareness there, you don't know how to act. So I believe I know, I don't just believe, but I know a lot of the stories I've heard, they did what they did because there was no education, there was no awareness, and in some cases, they didn't even realize it was truly wrong.
Yeah.
And they just did it.
Right, exactly.
So I think it's very important that not just the boys, the men, but also the women, that there is a discussion of the dangers of sex and also sex education. When they get, not when they're really little, but when they get up there to that age, there's a certain age
to where they understand it.
Right.
They don't need to be, I feel like even at 10 years old, they don't need to know everything about all that. But when you start hitting puberty, it's going to be about 11, 12, 14, 12, 13 years old. That is when their whole body is starting to change. I've seen it with my own kids, so that's how, I know. So I feel like there is an age to where they should not know all about that, even though it's being taught in school today at a very young age. It is absolutely absurd.
Right.
But that's the way they're doing it. So,
But you get up there to that hormone age, and then you got to try to figure all this out, and you don't know how to react to it because there was no discussion about it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a problem in the Amish, how especially the women are taken inside. They can't see any of what even the animals do. And me personally, in my community, I remember a girl my age, 1 year older than me, I think she was. She got married and didn't even know how a baby was born until she was married.
or how it was made.
Yeah, how a baby is brought into the world.
Yeah.
We simply believed mom and dad when they said, in the middle of the night, when God wants you to have another brother or sister, an angel from heaven brings it down overnight. And it always was overnight when it was dark when we're sleeping.
Yeah. Well,
I believe that.
Guess that, like, you remember our grandma, right? She had left the Amish, but she told us that when she was when she got married, she did not know. And this was back.
Wow, I forgot about that.
This was back 85 years ago. She did not know how baby was made when she was married.
Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot about that.
This is our grandma back in the, 1940s.
Gotten married,
She
and
did
didn't even
not
know
know.
how. Wow.
And then when Grandpa was like, "Hey, this is how you do it. how you go about it," and she was like, "What? That's gross. You're not going to do that to me." But
To be honest with you, that's what I thought when I first.
yeah,
I thought it was a lie. The first time when I was 16 and first heard that, I said, no way. There's no way. That's gross. That's sick. There's no way a baby can be born in that way. It's got to be an angel coming down from heaven because we're humans. We're not animals.
yeah,
But why did I think that? Because I was not educated.
Yep.
It was never a discussion among the community.
That's right.
Biggie Lynn asks, what is the shop you talk about next to your mom and dad's or door? Next door is it's Mid-Ohio Wood Recycling. If you're familiar with the area out there, it's called Mid-Ohio Wood Recycling. That was the pallet shop right next to my mom and dad's house. Lindsay Michael says, how does the marriage and dating thing work? And we talked about that a few times in the videos.
Yeah.
I did not personally date an Amish girl before I left, but I kind of heard and knew how it works. But David, you kind of took a girl on a date, kind of, I guess, touch up on that a little bit real quick and just say how when you took her home, you went to her house, right?
Yep. So you ask a girl out on a Sunday night. Oh, you personally don't. You have your buddy go ask this girl, like, hey, you want to go out. David Yoder wants to take you out on a date tonight. Will you do it? Will you oblige that? And she'll say yes or no. If she says yes, you're good to go. That's another big, huge secret. So you try to keep that a secret as long as possible. And then you either take her to her house or you meet her at her house and you have a date. And it's not a date like they do it, out here today. It's usually you sit on a bench side by side, or they use a rocking chair and she sits on your lap, and that you have a conversation, whatever it is, and you just talk about whatever's going on, and then you're supposed to be home by 1 o'clock in the morning, and then if it takes off where she likes you and you guys you ask her out again in a couple weeks and keeps on going like that, then you go steady, and then you date for a couple of years, and when you turn 20, 21 and everything's going good, you guys talk about it if you want to maybe get married, and then the parents get involved, and you set the marriage date, and you tell the preachers that they announce it in church that so-and-so and so-and-so are getting married on this date, and that's how it works. So it's
I think
kind of a long, drawn-out process.
Usually, 21, I think, was marriage. Now, if I remember right, 21 was when you were finally allowed to have your own money, right?
Yep. Okay. Yep. 21 is when you consider it of coming of age. Not 18, 21.
Right.
So
why get married before that when you don't even have your own money saved up at 21?
Yeah. Yep.
So would make sense why you'd want to wait to get married until you have your own money. Paula Schick Jones says, why would you two help to get other Amish out, and have you? Well, I've helped a few of them out when I was able to. I could have helped more out, but I was kind of I kind of went a little wild there for a while when I first left, and I was, partying and I was kind of a bad example to really help anybody out. So a few times I could have helped a couple that, and I didn't, but I should have been in the right situation to be able to help them out.
Yeah.
Jessica Elmore, do you know Mose and Wilma Miller? Yes, that is our aunt and uncle, right, David?
Yep.
My great-grandma, France Harder, was from Kenton. Yep. There's a lot of people that know some of her family.
Yep.
Mary Simpson Smith, it's such a shame that they have to remain
subservient
in Christ. We are to a fellow servants to one and joint hires in salvation. Yeah, you're right on that. You know what? There's a lot of Old Testament ruts, I think, that they stay in, especially in the Old Order community.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't have the same, it should be 50-50. I know my English marriage now, we're very 50-50. It's not lopsided. It's not one-sided where I have more rights than my wife or she's got more rights than me. We discuss situations and it's 50-50. But in the Amish, it's very lopsided. The men are the ones that the father of the household, and they rule over everything. And sometimes that is what leads to abuse, because the men they have all the power and authority, because that's what they're taught by the church. And that's kind of Old Testament-ish, because in the New Testament, I don't see a whole lot about having to submit to the man the way they do. It talks about that.
Yeah.
It's a Bible verse I can go to that says to submit to the man.
Right.
But it's not about using that verse to abuse your wife.
Exactly.
And take advantage in,
Yep.
It gets taken way too far in the Amish. They will take Bible verses to back up why they do what they do.
Yep. Jessica Elmore, and she say, "Are you scared that the Amish will come after you for telling how they really are?" No, nothing scary here at all.
Nope. I'm not trembling because I'm talking about the. Well, I will say this. I'm glad you brought that up because
they do catch wind of what
Yes.
he's doing, or, and try to. And we're not. It's not about harping on them or putting them down. It is nothing about that.
Right.
It's about exposing of the things that go on. It's not about
make awareness.
Exactly. Awareness is what it's all about.
And folks, the reason I'm so motivated to do Amish Q&As because I've had a lot of people that have been in our community of Kenton all their life, and there's still things they don't know about the Amish. There's still so many of them that messaged me and said, I didn't know that about them. I just learned something by your video. So it just shows you we were encouraged as little Amish children not to talk about their way of life.
Oh, yeah.
Their rules and their Ordnung and what they do. We simply just didn't talk about that. And we actually, at one time I was talking to one in the driveway and Mom heard it and she says, don't talk about that. She told me in Dutch so the English person couldn't hear it that I need to watch what I say because the English folks, they don't need to hear what we do and why we do it.
Yep.
Samantha P. Hey, David.
That's Ryan.
Ryan.
Ryan Osborne. How's it going, Ryan?
Ryan Osborne. Is he going to be there tomorrow?
Yeah, he's going. He's
awesome. Nice to meet you.
I text him the address and stuff, so he'll be there tomorrow.
Chelsea Hamilton wants to know if women leave the community, and if so, is it harder? Oh, yes, it is absolutely harder for women to leave, because in our community especially, they're so sheltered. They're always in a house, and it's much harder for them to leave. And here's why I say this: my own sister Clara, before she got married, her and her husband, when they were dating, they left, and they were only out for 2 weeks. And he was all in. He wanted to stay. But she says, nope. She told him, if you want me, then you come back Amish because I'm going back home. And I tried to help her out and encourage her, but I understood it was overwhelming.
Yeah.
It was so fast-paced. It was so different. And she was very close with Mom, way closer than I ever was, because she was always in the kitchen. She was making clothes with Mom. She was cooking, cleaning, always with Mom. So that was a really hard thing for her to just leave and just put it all behind her. So I supported her in going back because I understood it would have been much harder for her to stay out here in this life than it ever was for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even for us, for me anyway, it was hard to leave your family and not be there every day. I mean, you've always wondered how things are going at home. You still know how everything, how the house looks on the inside, like wonder what they're doing in the house. And it was kind of, sometimes, it definitely got emotional. Like, man, you're missing your family. You want to go back home, but then you look at the other side of it. It's just like, man, I don't want to go back home. I want to go home, but I don't want to go back home to that,
Right.
And it wasn't what was going on in the household. It was how the Amish, how it was being ran, I guess you could say. The government, the Amish government.
Basically, it's an Amish government.
Yeah. I mean, even there's no paperwork, but it's like, my way or the highway. So
they tell you what you got to do. If you don't follow those rules, you'll see a buggy clip-clopping in the driveway late in the evening. And sometimes we were still in the chores and Dad got pulled to the side and they're hashing out what they heard that he did.
Yeah.
And they're investigating. And if he says, well, there might be something to it, he's got to make it up with the church. See, church is number one.
Yeah.
You have to go through them to be forgiven and make it right with them. It's not about making it right with the Lord and just asking Him for forgiveness. It ain't that simple. You got to go through a process.
Yep.
But Rachel, nice to see you on here, Rachel. Just talked to you on the phone earlier. Do you guys think that a lot of Amish children learn from what they see in the barn? Yes.
Yeah.
There's some heinous things. I have heard some bad things that's happened in the community, and not just my community. I've had people reach out to me that things that's happened that they couldn't control, even sexual lusts, like what we said earlier, the hormones.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to control that. So sometimes I've heard some stories where even in our Amish community, some that have admitted and confessed before the church that they had some some not so decent acts that they have committed even with an animal, and because they didn't know how, again, lack of education, not being being educated and talked about, so they just kind of went crazy.
They might not have, like he said earlier, they might not have knew it was wrong, but they seen the bull do that, or the pig, or whatever it may have been. So
Well, if it works for the animal, I wonder if it works that way for me.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what, folks? I know this stuff sounds bizarre.
It's sick.
But some of these old order Amish communities, when there's no education and no awareness and it's not being discussed, it leads to problems later on down the road, trust me.
Yep.
Also, do you know, Jessica Elmore says, also, do you know Carol and Ruby Miller? Oh, yes, that was Mose and Wilma's daughters. That would be our first cousins.
Yep.
I don't know where they live in Tennessee, I believe, by now.
Yeah, I believe so.
Let's see here. Trying to find some more questions. Do you date before you get married? Oh, yeah. You date before you get married. You date sometimes, 2 years, you'd say?
Yeah.
Before you get married?
Yeah, at least, yeah.
They date for a little while.
Sometimes they have a shotgun wedding because they couldn't keep their hands off themselves during the dating process. So, and if that happens, that means she's pregnant and they got to get married real quick and might be 19 years old. Who knows?
I'm glad you brought that up, David.
It does happen.
Yes.
Quite a bit.
The ones that don't know and haven't been educated about any kind of sexual thing and how babies are born, those you'll find out really quick how little they were taught by their parents, and they don't know those things. Now, some do learn about this stuff, and there is cases that we've heard where they did, during dating, the girl got pregnant, and automatically, they call it, a shotgun wedding, I think is what, So you're just automatically married. You don't even have a normal wedding like they traditionally do because, if she gets pregnant, you're just considered married. You're done. That's it. If you wasn't planning on getting married to that one, you just screwed up. You're going to be married to her anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, don't pick an ugly one. Brenda Phipps says, hi, is that all they do on a date is talk? Well, that's kind of what we just said. You're supposed to just talk. I don't know, David, you went on a date. Did you hold her, kiss her?
You're allowed, you're allowed to kiss. And like the girl that I dated, she sat on my lap in a rocking chair. That's how we dated. I mean, talked and I don't know. I tell you what, if you don't know any better, time goes by really fast because you get into a conversation. You just talk about different things of how you look at things and how she looks at things, and the conversation. And the next thing you know, it's like time to go home. It's not like it's a very dull date as far as, out here, it would be. But Amish, that was something that you look forward to. It was the highlight of your evening if you got to go on a date. So
that was always something to look forward to, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Vicky Lynn Taylor says, what do teenagers do for fun? Well, I remember going out and playing outside with the wagon a lot when we did. Well, it was a lot about work all the time, but if it was in between Sunday and we didn't go to church, we sometimes got a kite. My dad, I remember him buying a kite, and we flew a kite and stuff. So stuff like that was a lot of fun. There was definitely no electricity with video games or a television. You didn't have that.
Just ask your grandma and grandpa what they did for fun, and that's what we did for fun back in the day.
Yeah, pretty much,
basically.
Because back then they didn't have the technology and video games and TV, so they played outside in the dirt. You got a little dirty.
Yep.
Paula also asks, what do families do in the evenings, especially in the winter? English have TV and music. Do they play games? Yeah, we had board games, I remember. Puzzles to put together.
Monopoly, life game, board games and all stuff like that. Dominoes, dice, Yahtzee.
Remember having
that
Yahtzee.
Stuff, so, yeah.
Checkers. I remember having checkers and a Monopoly game at home. So.
And a lot of them read. They read books. They read all the time. So there's stuff, to keep them occupied, I guess.
Alicia Weaver says, I grew up in Hardin County and spent a lot of time in Marseilles, Ohio. I married a Weaver from Kirby, Ohio. Wow, that must be back when we were way younger.
Yeah. She says, so we always go to Mary's for food.
Mary's, Aunt Mary.
That's your aunt, yep.
That's my Aunt Mary that has the grocery store and sells baked goods and stuff like that.
A lot of people know her around here because she's been doing it for like decades.
We've had this a couple times when we go Facebook Live. Sandy Bordner says, can you still understand Amish language? I can understand it better than I can speak it.
Yeah.
And here's why. When I shied away from that language after I left, I wasn't really around anybody for a long time to even speak it and keep it fresh in my mind. This year is 23 years that I've been out. And so if I don't use it, I lose it. And so I can actually understand it quite a bit better than I can speak it. I still struggle today speaking it because I didn't keep it up. So when you don't keep it up and you don't use it, you kind of lose it.
Yeah. It's very weird to talk that language right now.
Megan Marshall says, maybe there should be a community for those who want to leave but don't think they could handle it all up. But that'd be nice.
It would be.
I would love, actually, I like what Joe Kime is doing out of Ashland, Ohio. He's got what's called MAP, yeah. And he helps a lot to leave. And I wish there was more programs like that. His is called Mission to Amish People. And he mainly focuses on women. He helps them all, men and women. But there's a lot of women that struggle so bad when they come out of the Amish. And if they have the right resources and the right help to get them their Social Security number and birth certificate, all of that, and get a job and get their feet on the ground and get rolling, then it goes a lot smoother. And it's nice to have programs like that. I wish there was more.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Ryan said that Samantha are good people. Okay, I don't know them. Ryan.
That's Ryan, and said Samantha are good people. You guys are doing a good thing. Wilma and Moses are good family.
Wilma and Moses would be our aunt and uncle. I know exactly what you guys are talking about. Those clippity clop coming into the lane, Daniel Bontrager says.
Oh, yeah. He's from, I'm not sure. I think he lives in Iowa now.
Daniel Bontrager, I believe, is in Iowa. Yeah, he messaged me not long ago, and he grew up in our community. Nancy Byler, a friend of mine, wanted to leave to get an education to be a nurse. They dragged her home and sent her to a care and share in Ohio to be brainwashed. Wow. You know what? Thank you for bringing that up, Nancy, because I've heard a lot of stories like this where, and this is why I kept it very hush-hush and very secretive.
You have to.
Before I left.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to. If you talk about that you have thoughts of leaving the Amish, you're going to be bombarded with the elders of the church and even your parents, depending on who your parents are. My dad really didn't care. I mean, he was breaking all the rules anyway. My mom and dad were quite a bit different. And I remember, be honest with you, I remember your dad, David. He kind of stood up to the church. I always liked when I heard that your dad just firmly stood up to the church and he wouldn't let them bully him as much as my dad. He couldn't handle it and he gave into the pressure. And he was an alcoholic, so he went to alcohol and to take care of the pain because he had depression. But your dad always really stood up to the church.
I tell you, yeah, my dad, I looked up to that guy to this day. I feel like he's the greatest guy in the world. But he stood up to him. He did not tell him or let him bully him around. And, and I think that's the reason why they harassed him so much. I mean, he did construction work. He made more money than most of them guys out there, and that was not good because that was basically considered making the big money. So the people that were always on his tail are doing the same thing today that they were doing, that my dad was doing years ago, and that was doing construction work. He was good at it. Everybody wanted him to work for him. And for number one, the Amish got our family into a big rut because we had a huge barn fire, pig fire. It was a hog barn fire, basically, is what it was. And we lost all of our hogs. We were in debt like up to our eyeballs. And Dad he didn't know where to turn because the church did not pay to help rebuild that building except for like 25% of it. And it should have been 75%. Well, the reason for that was their excuse for not helping is because we had a heater in the hog barn to keep the little pigs warm so they wouldn't freeze. And that's the hog. So one of the hogs got out of the fairing crate and tipped over the heater, and it caught on fire, burned the building down. Well, that caused us to be in a huge debt. So my dad, being good, what he does, he was good at construction, so he went and did construction work. Well, they didn't like that because he was making big money and he was paying our debt off. Well, that was a way for us to get out. And then he was also a good horseshoer. He would shoe the horses like for racetracks, and you get paid big money for that. They tried to outlaw that. It was just a great big huge mess. But the reason my dad got to doing construction work or shoeing horses is because the Amish got him into a rut to where he had to do something in order to feed his family. And for him doing that, so they came after him to try to stop that. So it was just literally, my dad went to work one day and he was not going to come back home. He had 8 kids at home and he was not going to come back home. He was going to leave the Amish and leave all of us behind. And there was an Englishman that sold feed. His name was Ed Link. And he ran my dad down, found him while he was going to town and pulled him over and said, because he told my dad told my mom before he left the house that he was not going to come back home that evening.
Wow.
So, and when Ed Link drove into our driveway, my mom went out and talked to him and told him what my dad told her. Well, and Ed Link was like, "Where's he at?" And mom said he went to work. He went to town to shoe horses. And so Ed Link ran him down on the road and said, "Hey," stopped him and said, "You can't do that." And there's this English guy that stopped my dad from leaving his family or from leaving the Amish.
Wow.
So, but the Amish look at all these English people as very bad people, mainly. But they utilize them so they can get by, on their daily basis. Like they utilize the Amish to go to town. They utilize them to talk on the phone, do whatever,
Business
ride.
dealings
Yeah.
and stuff, too.
So it's just absolutely absurd. And so I just remember that was part of my reason where I felt resentment against the Amish of how they treat certain people. And that just kind of, I think that's what I was like, that's the dagger right there. I can't stay here.
They kind of had it out for your dad because he stood up for himself.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep. So he stood up for himself and a lot of other ones that were like him. And it's just like the politicians out here. You stick up for a certain group, you're going to be censored. You're going to be ridiculed for it. You're going to act.
Yep.
You're going to be told that you're the worst person in the world. So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's not as bad as the Amish, but it is out here. But that's kind of how it works.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because I remember that because we sometimes, us boys, would talk about that. Man, if our dad would just do what Uncle Malin did and stand up for himself. Because we were so tired of Dad just being so depressed. And, he'd come home and he would take it out on the family. He got really angry. He was alcoholic. He was depressed, So it made his depression and his situation actually worse when they just kept barking up his tree and just coming after him. And, hey, you broke this rule and that rule and that rule.
Yeah.
And there was no help there. They just kept making him so angry he wanted to leave.
I mean, you get hammered and hammered and hammered and you get tired of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. I remember thinking when I left the Amish a year or so later, like, if that person would say that to me today, I would knock him out. But back then, even though you were 18, 19, 20 years old, you didn't think about punching anybody because it just wasn't done. I mean, they might have fought, like, wrestling each other or pulling hair.
Face to face.
That was just
spit throwers.
Yeah. But it was crazy.
What Nancy Baker said earlier, though, about the brainwashing, they took her taking you to a place to try to, even other Amish, they make it sound like the other Amish community can be there to help that person because you had a different view or you might have felt like leaving the Amish. That's wrong what they do because they brainwash you. They use other Amish and elders to brainwash you and say, and truly make you believe that you will not go to heaven if you continue what you're thinking. Like if I'd have said, hey, I'm having thoughts of leaving when I was 14, 15 years old, do you know how they would have tried to brainwash me? Well, heck, they brainwashed everybody anyway.
Yeah.
And make you think as a little child growing up that if you're simply not part of them and their rules and their ordnung in the church, you just can't get to heaven. But when you ask them, like I did my mother, are all English people that are not Amish, are they all going to hell? And she stops short of saying yes, but she'll say, well, that's up to God. but we do know we're right by the way we live. Our way of life is how you get to heaven. So they won't come out and say yes, but pretty much that's how they look at it.
Yeah.
Joyce Yoder, thank you so much for sharing part of your story, she says. Hey, no problem. I just like making awareness.
Yep.
A lot of people need to be aware how they operate and what they do. Harold Hockton says, do the Amish take the kids to the barn and spank them? Well, not just in a barn. My dad was pretty open. We sometimes got it in public.
It's wherever. Yeah, not as much in town or in public.
Right.
But it usually gets your spanking at home, or if you're at another Amish place, where if it's even in school or church, if they want to spank you there, they'll do it.
What time you got there, David?
2:45.
And we got a couple more minutes here.
Yep.
Let's see. Christy Harp says, are the parents in the room during the date?
Nah.
No.
No.
Now, did you always went to the girl's house for a date, right?
Yeah.
Did you have to let them know that you were there for a date?
Nope. The girl that I dated she lived in Clark, Missouri, so she came to Ohio one time. So she, obviously she was at my house then. But if it was usually it was at the girl's house when you had a date with her.
Chase Hollingsworth says, did you live the same life as Levi? He's talking about my twin brother is living now. No, it was in Kenton still when we grew up, so it was a lot different.
Yeah.
But if I would have been in that community where he's at, that would have helped me a lot because they're not as strict. They're more moderate. They're not as they don't have the same Ordnung, the same rules that they follow. So they were way more lenient on the things they did. So I would have probably enjoyed that a lot more.
Yeah.
You have brothers there too.
That's what I said. When my parents first moved to Huntington, Tennessee, and that was a couple of years after I had left, and I'm thinking to myself, man, if my dad would have just moved from Kenton to there, to Huntington, I probably would not have left because I like their lifestyle, and it is so beautiful down there. I love going down there to visit. It's just the scenery and the landscape. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love Tennessee.
It's always fun going down there to visit.
Yep.
Paula Schick Jones says, just had your Aunt Mary's cinnamon rolls. Oh, she makes good cinnamon rolls. Oh, and that ex-Amish cousin I have, Wilma Beachy. Oh, you talk about soft cinnamon rolls? Oh, yeah. I think they're going to have those in heaven. Sandy Bordner says, how long has it been, David, since you've been out? It'll be 23 years for me this year, and I believe you left 2 years after I left.
Yep. So it'll be about 21. 2001 is when I left, May of 2001. So 9/11 happened that same year.
Should be 20. Yeah. So this is 2021, 20 years this year for you.
Something like that, 20 years.
To wrap the video up, I'll talk a little bit about this last comment, reminded me of it. I've seen a young Amish man, Molly Gallo says, young man skateboarding on State Route 292. So she's talking about our community out here.
Yeah.
A video went viral this past week on Columbus News TV channels with Amish grabbing hold of a rope tied to a buggy and having skis on. Now, we never had skis, but I remember me and you and your brothers, we would put ice skates on and grab a hold of the back of the buggy and skate down the road because we had a lot of snow and it got packed down, so it formed like a icy surface.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap the video up with that. We had a lot of fun, wouldn't you say, on that kind of stuff?
That was fun. And we always look forward to sledding down the hill and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, as far as rollerblading, skateboarding on the road, is that a problem with the bishop? Not really. It wasn't back when we did it, because I think our family, we had skateboards, and we skateboarded everywhere. I mean, that was a fast way to get to where. And I don't remember hardly anybody else having skateboards, so I'm surprised we didn't get hollered at for that.
Yeah.
But
it didn't get forbidden. I remember that because since you guys got by with it, I remember being jealous, and I told my dad, we need to get some skateboards because my cousins have skateboards.
I tell you what, that was fun. We always fought of who was going to go to the neighbors to do whatever, because skateboarding on the road was fun.
we had a way of having fun. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a lot of work all the time, but we figured out ways to have fun. And even if it took sneaking out the window in after dark, sliding down the roof, and using our homemade little wagon and take the 5 horsepower Honda engine off of the pump from the well, and putting it on the wagon. We got that idea from you guys. So we did things to get in trouble. We did stupid things, but we also had fun while we did it.
Yep, that was good times, I tell you.
You remember ever sneaking out in the middle of the night?
Oh, I did it so many times, it was pathetic.
So yeah, we had our share of getting in trouble too. So breaking the rules.
Me, that's definitely didn't do things like we should have, but
it was only breaking the Amish rules.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily breaking a God's commandments in the Bible.
Right. I agree with that.
Well, folks, we have a lot more we can get to in our another video. We'll continue doing this. I'm going to stay under an hour on this video so that I can upload it on YouTube. Thank you for joining us, and thank you again, David, for doing an Amish Q&A with me.
Absolutely, I enjoy it. I hope you guys get some good vibes out of it, and just I don't know. We're trying to shed light on how we grew up, and hopefully you guys enjoy it.
And we speak for our community, which is Old Order. We can't speak for all communities,
right?
Because all of them seem to be different. So hopefully we shine some awareness on what our community. Because there's a lot of people that follow me on here are from the community of Kenton.
Yep.
So hopefully you guys can learn, and it can teach you what the Amish do and how their lifestyle is.
That's our goal.
All right, y'all have a good weekend. God bless.
God bless you guys. See you.